So good morning, everybody. We are here January 8th, 2021. It is actually the anniversary birthday of Elvis Presley. I don't know how many people celebrate that fact, but we are in a library forum, and we have two very important library talents joining us today. One, Esperanza, who's stepping in for John Arthur, the director of our library. And we have somebody who works in the Teaneck library that's joining us. Miss Ann Speronice. Hi, Ann. How are you?
Oh, I've been to work for a while, but yeah, good.
Wonderful. And Ann recently became a grandma, so thank you for joining us. Ann's on the county committee of Englewood's municipal committee, that is, as one of the Democratic district leaders, and we appreciate you and congratulate you on this very special time in your family life. We have the usual suspects all lined up on Zoom, and smiles indeed, and we're missing Alita, who has sadly a funeral. Anthony David's mother passed away. Anthony David is now the new chair of our planning board. He was installed, and I had the privilege of swearing him in last evening. He graciously stayed for a few minutes, and today is the interment of his mom. So we thank Anthony for his continued service, and we wish condolences to the entire David family. Or many of them firefighters, school board, planning board involved in public service. So your loss is our loss, and all our love to the family. Hi, Jeff. How are you today? Jeff Carter, our NAACP rep, is with us as well. So we are ready to go into coffee with the mayor. Tell me, if I can, Esperanza, anything special going on in the library?
We're preparing for a bunch more online programs for this coming year, and one that I wanted to point out is next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. That's January 13th. Black Box Pack is continuing on with one of their shows for us. They've done a lot of Shakespeare virtual shows for us during the lockdown, and they will be presenting a reading of The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. So that's next Wednesday at 8 through the library. It will be on Zoom, it will be on Facebook Live, and I'm very excited for it. So that, along with a bunch of other programs, will be coming up. So I hope you will join us and register for that and other programs that we'll be having.
Wonderful. Thank you, Esperanza, for doing extraordinary work. You and John are to be lauded in a very difficult time, keeping us all kind of together, appreciating not just history, but the content of how to get through this pandemic. We're going to have PTSD, but to the extent that we can socialize and acclimate when we all do get restored, you will be one of the more main ingredients of that process. I would like to also congratulate the two new members of the council, Ken Rosenzweig and Judith Marin. We had the privilege of swearing them in this week, and also to the planning board members. I swore in last evening. Anthony David, again, who became chair, Diana Patino, who's the city representative that I appointed, Roosevelt Jean, and Howard Schaefer, a new member, as well as Emily Mann, who's in charge of our sign and facade committee as well. All the same professionals were reappointed, and we did a deep dive already in a very important application just yesterday. Well, we are at a precipice of extraordinary times. This is the first public venue other than the planning board last night where I have an opportunity to speak to the community on what we saw just the other evening, the other day in Washington. It was sedition in front of us. What an extraordinary, sad experience for all of us to pray witness to, for the President of the United States actually to cause this to happen, and then for there to be such a deep, vulnerable presence in the Capitol is something that history will record as well. I have to tell you that most of my clients who hail as an immigration lawyer outside of the United States refused to really speak to me because they thought we were going through something traumatic, and they understood that it filtered down to their lawyer, their plumber, all of the vendors and the people that they deal with, because insurrection and sedition is something that you would generally see in a third world country, not in the United States, and it must have been extraordinary that it happened. What happened is unacceptable, had to end, and should never be repeated. A person, any elected official, anyone of any influence who does not speak out against this, and I've been happy to see that everybody seems to be speaking out against it, is really not getting what this golden experiment in democracy is. Those who participated in this act should be treated as criminals, of course, given due process, but they should be thrown away to the hardest extent of the law, and this should never be allowed to ever happen again. I want you to understand from a Homeland Security and national security metric, these were individuals that were running into the Capitol with backpacks, with Molotov cocktails. It could have been very easy for a terrorist organization to infiltrate this. This is just something that could have ended poorly. Both houses were in session, and I am shocked at the vulnerability. The person who ran this, as I understand, resigned or is being relieved of their duty. And the truth is that they would be court-martialed if this was a military installation that they were in charge of. We are vulnerable.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Jeff.
I just want to chime in also, too. There's been a lot of stuff on social media, and that our national president of the NAACP said, this just shows the racism in America. The Black Lives Matter group that was peacefully protesting this summer were gassed and, cleared out in front of my Episcopal church, St. John, so that Trump could go across and hold the Bible upside down and take a photo op. Yet, and all through media, people are saying that if it was black, more people would have been dead.
So that was noted also by the president-elect, that the response here, and, again, they're going, thank God the FBI is already on it, and they're going to deploy thousands of agents to prosecute this. The fact that selfies were taken, some of the barricades were opened up to the masses. And again, how did they breach this, and how vulnerable are we as a nation if our hard targets, this is a hard target, could be infiltrated by domestic terrorists? How vulnerable are we? And then how is justice being meted out? So I appreciate your comments, and the president-elect actually appreciated it also. Ann led a march yesterday by the monument to start the 25th Amendment. Ann, do you want to speak about that for a minute?
Yeah, so it was impromptu, but it was a demonstration we sent out to various email lists just to demand impeachment of the president, or removal by any means, any legal means possible, because truthfully, if he's not held accountable in some way for this, I know there's only 12 days, but if he isn't held accountable, it'll be like, oh, well, let's just move on. No, I don't think that this is the time to move on. And the Democrats have said that if Pence doesn't try to invoke the 25th Amendment, to impeach next week. So what I'm also saying is that we should be calling our elected representatives to tell them how we feel about this. That would be, in our case in Englewood, of course, Bill Pascrell, who I know, is with us, but nevertheless, he needs to hear from us, and so does Cory Booker and Robert Menendez.
So the 25th, the 25th Amendment, for it to be activated, the vice president has to lead the charge, the cabinet has to concur, and then there's a process where the president gets to defend himself. With the impeachment, there's also a process, and you have 13 days now till the president's term ends. So as a measure of principle, I want you to understand Republican leadership in both the House and the Senate also concur. The question is by attrition or by time. It just may be a moot issue. But the consequence of this will be recorded in history. And it is a terrible embarrassment to our nation that this happened. I worked on Capitol Hill when I was 18 years old. In the summer of 1984, I was 20 actually. In 1984, I worked for Gary Ackerman and Geraldine Ferraro, who at the time was selected to be, she was a congresswoman who was selected to be the vice presidential candidate with Walter Mondale as a presidential candidate. And they moved me over to her office. I remember coming into her office at the Secret Service. She was there. There was a beautiful note on her desk, and it was to Geraldine, "It's a great job. Best of luck to you, George." Okay? At the time, Ronald Reagan was president. George Bush Sr. was vice president, and here he had the dignity to send a personal handwritten note to Geraldine Ferraro, wishing her good luck in the election. There was a collegiality, there was a respect. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you could disagree, as a family would disagree over a dinner table, and then you would come together and there would be a succession of power that was laudatory. Those days are gone, and if we do not remind ourselves and hold our elected officials to some level of accountability, history repeats itself, and if we don't step forward now, then our children have no excuse and every right to allow the dialogue to deteriorate even further. And that's the concern that I have here. There's so many different people that are enthralled with the president for so many good things that may have happened or things that facilitated, whether it's Middle East peace and other things, that they forget the big picture, that our domestic agenda and our relationships between race, between communities, and the economics of this COVID have been devastated. And the only issue that seems to have been at play was his own claim to power. And that, to me, is the most damaging consequence of this. And if there is no consequence personally, then that's a problem for our nation. So I didn't want to start with my normal rendition without addressing this. And it's hard for me. I've had a relationship professionally with the Trump organization and obviously with Mrs. Trump's family, and I have the highest respect for her and her family. And it's a very difficult matter to process as an American. I felt vulnerable. I've never felt that vulnerability. In the middle of a pandemic with storms and all kinds of issues going on, it was really a travesty, and I just wanted to have that conversation publicly. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, in the week of January 8th, 2021. Our nation continues to reckon with a deadly, worsening pandemic. Our Congressman Bill Pascrell tells us that we've crossed 21,100,000 infections and 357,000 deaths, an astronomical number. Yesterday, we recorded over 3,400 deaths, and yet another single day record of 131,195 coronavirus hospitalizations. During this deeply trying time, the Congressman has been working very hard to help with our economic security, and the $600 direct payments should be out already. If anybody has questions, please reach out to his office. An update in New Jersey, there were 504,647 confirmed cases, 19,486 deaths, an increase of 35,747 infections, and 731 deaths from last week. So understand that. 731 people within several miles of where you live died last week. Please practice social distancing, wearing masks, and good hygiene. The vaccine is on the way. The distribution is underway. I am proud to tell you that I spoke yesterday to Warren Geller, the CEO of Englewood Hospital, as well as Fred Fish, the owner of Trico, the Palisades Court, and they are making plans now to take the old kickboxing facility and deploy vaccines there. So every resident in the city of Englewood will have a place where they can park, where they can get scheduled, where they can muster for 15 minutes afterwards and make sure they have no adverse reaction. And all of those phases, phase 1B, then phase 1C, and phase 2, as that is deployed over the spring, everybody then will have it and comfortably be able to go. Phase 1C will also include other essential workers, 65 to 74 in person, 16 to 64 with medical conditions. The CDC protocols are going to be respected. I know the township of Teaneck is partnering with Holy Name Hospital. This is our plan here in Englewood. Yes, sir.
Did you find out about the cost for people who potentially may not have medical insurance?
I asked Mr. Geller last night, the CEO of Englewood Hospital. He understood that the cost is about $12 per shot, but that they would probably end up waiving to those people that were indigent and could not make the payment. There's an administrative cost that they're allowed to charge, and they're going to charge people's insurance. if the person doesn't have insurance, they'll probably do the righteous thing and let it pass. That was the answer to
One
the
other,
question.
can I just interrupt you for one other second on a happy note?
Yes.
And I'm so astonished that you didn't say it. Leading off on a happy note, we had two Democratic senators, and yes, I'm stepping out of my NAACP nonpartisanship. We had two Democratic senators elected in Georgia.
I didn't get there yet.
have a 33-year-old young Jewish senator from the great state of Georgia, and to have an African American whose mother picked cotton in Georgia. To God be the glory, and that is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. But more importantly, they understand, and the NAACP singers, they understand helping people and caring for people. This should have been your first thing that you said.
Could I just say something about that?
Please,
yes. We need a bright light in all this.
I know. I figure I'd leave the good news till later, but please, Ann, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that didn't happen like by accident. Like that was really hard fought. First of all, Stacey Abrams is giant among organizers. She's got an army out there. A lot of us were part of that army, making calls every day since November 3rd. And I think that, you know, every time you made a phone call that you reached somebody, you were working around those margins. And it was the margins that won out this election. I just want to say everybody can be involved in this. It was easy. In fact, this is one of the benefits of this COVID period is that we had to learn to work in a different way. Like usually a phone bank would be like you go someplace and you get on the phone and oh my God, it's such this way you sit down at your own computer and you run through these automatic dialers. And I'm just saying, when you have an opportunity comes to you to work on an election, because, you know, Raphael Warnock is up again in 2022. He didn't win a 6-year term. He won a continuation of somebody else's term. So he's got to win again. So the opportunity presents itself for you to participate yourself. It's not hard. And it matters.
It changed the way we not only vote, but the way we campaign. I wrote if you go on my Facebook page, which is Mayor Michael Wild's ESQ, I penned an article on post-COVID elections, because it's not like when people, it's likely we're going to end up having a vote by mails also. It's not like you can send literature and hope and pray that people will hear it and see a few things and then make a decision. You need to really have an ongoing relationship with the voters, with returning phone calls and doing things. And people now have the time. A pandemic affords you time to develop relationships and thoughts. And there are a lot of blind spots that I'm always asking and delving into, because people are now aware. They're home more. They're working in, they're buying food locally as opposed to in Manhattan. So they're more aware of traffic patterns and all kinds of issues that come up. And that also gives us great responsibility to be good to our neighbor. And by the way, Ann, what you're talking about with Stacey Abrams is sheer extraordinary, because when you say by good to our neighbor, it's easy for you to make phone calls into Georgia trying to get people out to vote from Englewood, New Jersey, as if you were there, because the deployment of the campaign is a very different animal. And as we get more technologically savvy, as we speak through a Zoom experience, it's so important for us to kind of take stock that it's easier for us to get things done now because of technology, and to use this to our advantage and not fall prey to history. Look what happened in the 1918 with the pandemic. When somebody went to a parade, we heard a speaker from the library about 6 months ago who told us that people didn't wear masks, and then there was a massive deployment of the contaminant thereafter. We are wiser now because of technology, and we have to use it smarter. But more importantly, we have to make wise decisions with the technology. So hopefully we get a better product in Washington and Trenton and at City Hall all the time. That's my personal prayer. But let me run through the rest of this content so I can bring everybody up to speed. Unemployment insurance to the Department of Labor has distributed $20 billion in state and federal unemployment benefits over 1.4 million New Jerseyans. And so forth. So thank you to the congressman for keeping us posted and for stepping up to watch us. The governor has set out COVID-19 tests are now free and widely available. There are links all over. And if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine, please speak to a medical professional to get it done. Governor Murphy delivered his 2021 State of the State address. It was virtual, and he's working to build a stronger and more resilient post-pandemic economy. The police and fire vaccine, the governor indicated that effective January 7th, which was yesterday, police and fire professionals will be eligible to receive their vaccines. Police officers and firefighters are often called to respond to emergency and medical support, and the decision was made to protect them along with their emergency medical system and so forth. Governor Murphy also signed historic economic recovery legislation, which is being heralded and should be studied at this point. Governor Murphy also reminded New Jerseyans of the coverage benefits for the COVID-19 vaccine. And Jeff Carter, it seems that there's going to be a lot of healthcare affordability and transparency to make sure that everybody gets the COVID vaccine. I'm an EMT. I'm permitted to get a vaccine. Now, my wife doesn't get it until she's eligible for it. So you're going to have a different dynamic in people's households where people still have to wear masks and conduct themselves diligently until the entire populace is vaccinated. I believe here, I'm just looking through my notes, that the objective is to get 70%. New Jersey's goal is to get 70% of the adult population of 4.7 million adults within 6 months. So that means that the major deployment is expected in mid-May for the masses to end up having it. That is, people that are healthy and younger and so forth. So it's very important that we exercise good discipline until then. Governor Murphy and the police superintendent Callahan announced administrative orders clarifying capacity limits for indoor sports practices and competitions and so forth. There is now a vaccine pre-registration link that's now live. It's covidvaccine.nj.gov. Go on there, please register yourself. Again, covidvaccine.nj.gov. The general public can pre-register. This will allow residents to input their personal contact, health insurance, demographic information, and screening questions so that things can be more seamless. The governor vetoed a bill that would have expanded outdoor dining for restaurants, distilleries, and breweries. Atlantic City's economy has also been devastated by the pandemic, and he is looking at all of the economic drivers, and there are some that will not be walking for a long time. That's why I say, as a mayor of the city of Englewood, please patronize the takeout food in the restaurants and the businesses that we have as best as you can. New Jersey unemployment claims are continuing to rise. Small business owners are having difficulty navigating these waters, and thankfully our legislative team is in place, and the governor is very sensitive to all of this. Turning to the Englewood scene, the Environmental Commission, I reappointed Michael Passow, Jack Silberman, Scott Redine, and I also appointed Raquel Janae, my daughter, who is a big believer in sustainability. She is a lawyer at Milbank Tweed, living here in the city of Englewood. I wish her well, and I look forward to swearing her in. Crystal Brown was also reappointed as well. The vaccine rollout, I got an email from a gentleman who is suggesting that they work for a company named Lonza that has partnered with Moderna to manufacture the vaccine, and they have accomplished a lot, and they're looking to deploy the vaccine with clear messaging, process simplification, scale, convenience, and so forth. So other than Englewood Hospital and what's being suggested now at Trico, there are other vendors that are going to try to set up a shop offering vaccines and so forth. The state of New Jersey is offering vaccines 24/7 at the MetLife Stadium, and ultimately there are going to be other drivers and people that are going to be more attuned to getting the vaccine locally if they can. The Silver Palette, a big business in town, reaches out to us on a few matters with regard, and I want to thank the code enforcement for reacting on health matters and other code-related matters to a distinguished company and friend. Somebody wrote to me about a new recycling project that they're working on. It's a pilot program that was launched in Fort Lee. They are a legislative director for one of their clients that they're working. Let me just see. It's to install outside of the schools to urge residents, especially children, to recycle. These are special bins that are made of outdoors and are wrapped with colorful, friendly monsters. The opening says "Feed Me," and they have all kinds of photos. We're trying to engage in very creative answers to keep people in tune to these important issues. Park cleanup at Glenbrook Parkway. Somebody writes me that their request that Glenbrook Parkway and Howell Avenue be cleaned, leaves, branches, and so forth, is sent it to Ed Roy Jenkins at Public Works and our city manager. On the McKay Ice Rink at John T. Wright, Ken Katz, the program director, tells us that the first half of our 2020-2021 season has quietly come to a close. This year they set goals that really, that seemed dashed due to the pandemic. They were, since opening October 19, the revenue from the McKay Ice Rink has been at $129,000. Their main objective this year was to provide a safe venue. Unfortunately, it meant curtailing a lot of the activities, but Governor Murphy now allowed the return of indoor high school sports. The next couple of months will present even more challenges. So their after-school program is set to resume, as well as some of the protocols that they have, where they have children walking to the back of the facility so they don't even go inside at all. And again, parents are urged not to tailgate and wait for them where they're breaching social distancing in the parking lot and so forth. The after-school program is sponsored by the Englewood Parks and Recreation, is off and running. Englewood's Hockey in New Jersey. They enrolled over 150 children. Thank you, Ken Katz, for your leadership. Office of Congressman Bill Pascrell, the Assistance to Firefighter Grant Program is now open. They announced that there's a period opening on January 4th and will close Friday, February 12th, where the city of Englewood can submit an application notifying their office that they need assistance. We were able to get assistance last year to the tune of 4 firefighters, which is a huge number, and presented a great opportunity for the city of Englewood. Any applications that are made will come through our city manager's office. Indoor sports are to resume in senior tax freeze. Governor Murphy announced that indoor sports may resume on January 2nd, subject to certain protocols, as well as the extension of the senior freeze application deadline. There was a complaint against a local business that I received on Armory Street, and I sent it off to the police department. There in our tree city, we have a lot of residents with trees and onerous fees to remove trees. Walter Depchuk, our code enforcement, explained the replanting of trees. The tree code allows you to make a donation to a city tree fund in lieu of planting. The city will then use donations to pay for trees to be planted on public property. That's Article 425-12 in our city code. Article 425-17 actually speaks to the appeal process if you believe that you have a hardship case. The hardship would then be heard by the city manager, who could be assisted by the city arborist or a representative of the Englewood Environmental Commission, and it could be forwarded to an appeal to the planning board as an alternative. So there's a lot of red tape, but the code has written tree preservation in mind. After all, Walter writes, we are the tree city. So when people want to take down trees, there's a protocol. They have to replace them. The balance of our city's namesake is very important. Thank you, Walter, for ensuring this important legacy. Those emails were robust. Dr. Martin Luther King birthday 2021. As you can imagine, 2021 birthday celebration will not be a live event due to the pandemic. Instead, they're preparing a pre-recorded version, and I was asked to participate with some children that were getting Merit Award scholarships and a lot of other local efforts to herald Dr. King, whose vision and words of excellence really are carrying me personally and a lot of communities. I'm reminded not just of the passing of the late, great John Lewis, but each year that we honor Dr. King, it seems that his words become even more momentous and more pertinent. And that has been the experience that I have. And I recall sitting with our governor in Pastor Taylor's church about a year ago, right before the pandemic hit us, and I cannot believe how time has flown by so quickly. I reached out to Franz Volzi. There is a gentleman who is in a wheelchair without legs, living at 111 West Street, and he asked me when I was campaigning that he wants to get a crosswalk. I want you to know I'm campaigned a year before I got re-elected, so it's now 3 years that I've been promised a lousy crosswalk, and I asked Franz about it. He writes to me, it's scheduled to go out to bid in the spring along with some other crosswalks in town. I don't understand why we can't have a crosswalk for a gentleman who does not have legs living in a senior housing facility where there are a lot of other senior folk that need to walk to ShopRite and to other facilities. And if we set up a place to give vaccines and people are expected to walk, we need to make it safe for people to walk. Franz is a wonderful engineer and a good man, but this is taking so long. I've asked now the equivalent of 3 or 4 city managers, Mr. Hines, Yancey, who is our acting city manager, Jewel, and I will bring it to the current city manager. Crosswalks, handicap signs, certain things should be done immediately because we cannot wait for a good season or a bad season, God forbid, to avert somebody getting hit who is infirmed. I cannot tell you how it breaks my heart, and I keep putting it out there with the prayer that somebody will get me a bucket of paint and show me how to do the damn thing myself. In any event, moving forward, BergenPak, we believe in their nonprofit mission to make live performing arts more accessible. They have stepped up with all kinds of virtual plans. They got very creative in parking lots of movie theaters this summer. The vaccine rollout has them imagining a more different year ahead. Please patronize them. A few dollars to them ensures that they'll be there to help us roll out of our social distancing and the challenges that we will face emotionally. And it's the world of entertainment, hospitality, and so forth that will help us kind of return to a more normal life. Now's the time to invest in them as they have in the past, and God willing will be in the future. The Actors Fund Home, Happy New Year. They welcome everybody. They are encouraged to inform everyone that the schedule for receiving their vaccination has been moved up, and they will be receiving their first vaccine on January 11th. That's this Monday. On day one, they've allocated 200 vaccines by the New Jersey Department of Health, which they will use wisely based on the guidelines and the recommendations of the Infection Control Committee and Dr. Ashwith Jahavdem. They will be vaccinating as many staff as possible, then vaccinate residents on Broadway and Hudson and memory care communities. So we thank the Actors Fund Home. They opened up a COVID unit, taking patients from Englewood Hospital in the height of the pandemic in the early month of March and April last year, and here they're helping to support their own staff and residents. We wish you Godspeed. I was asked to join a letter with elected officials. The U.S. Tennis Association is insisting through policy that does not allow Sabbath-observant Jews to participate in tournament-level tennis competitions. Somebody writes to me that their 13-year-old son is an avid tennis player with the hopes of making it to the U.S. Open and Division I tennis. Unfortunately, he's unable to progress in tennis career because of his inability and their unwillingness to violate the Sabbath and drive to play on Shabbat. And ultimately, there are a lot of leaders in the tri-state area and elsewhere that are writing to see if they can change this archaic policy. The microwave pickup, I heard from a resident that they had a broken microwave that they would like to dispose of properly. They've called Public Works to no avail. I reached out to Ed Roy Jenkins, the director, and hopefully he'll get back to them. Again, disposing of materials has to be done thoughtfully. Please call up Public Works so you do not jeopardize yourself or somebody else or hurt your back in these untoward times. Phone calls will avert and maybe make things easy for you. Very disturbing circumstance happened this past week. We have anti-abortionist protesters showing up every week in front of the facility that we have across the street, actually, from the library. And one of the owners of a nearby salon was approached by harassing fanatical religious rhetoric and anti-gay protestation. And I felt that that was a bias incident after he spoke to me. I spoke to the police chief and he concurred, and I'm in talks now with the victim to see if he would swear out complaints. It's one thing if you have a politic to advocate on something based on your own belief, religious sustenance, or imperative, but it does not give you the right to insult or to create a bias crime against somebody else. Nobody judges somebody else in the city of Englewood, and if the gentleman does not want to see the person prosecuted, I'm going to look to see if something can be done independently. I don't want bigots in the city of Englewood. Sidewalk ice in the corner of Tracy and Dwight Place. Somebody writes to me, thank you for your prompt return phone call. After speaking to you, I looked out my door and saw our DPW is ready on the scene. They seem to have the problem well in hand, and they're contacting the building department to help turn off the sprinklers on the property. There seems to be another property that is running their sprinkler system, creating an ice sheet for residents walking their dogs. Wow. That was 1 week, ladies and gentlemen, in the city of Englewood. Emails and communications to me from the community. Esperanza, last Friday was what day? January?
It was the 1st.
January 1st. It was New Year's Day. So looking at my notes, okay. So, January 1, we had coffee with the mayor, and then I had a robust phone call with several people that wanted to serve on boards. We had our reorganization meeting at the City Council on January 4th, and we had our weekly call with the City Health Department and other officials. Englewood, the City of Englewood on COVID is staying right now in a 7-day average 9 COVID positive patients per day. It attributes more numbers are expected because of New Year's and Christmas. Basically, the reason that they believe more numbers will pick up is because during New Year's and Christmas, the testing sites were closed, so more people couldn't get tested, so they're expected that there'll be more people perking up. But the numbers have gone down from 11 last week down to 9 people per day. We had 2 new deaths, sadly, and there are 2 people in a hospital right now who are unfortunately in bad shape. The Englewood Health Department is also looking to see if they can start their own process of getting the vaccines, and that's something that other health departments throughout the state are looking at, and so forth. ShopRite is disseminating vaccines, and the city is also looking to make sure that they're consistently telegraphing and communicating with residents on events and all sorts of other content to make sure that people know what the governor's protocols are and that you're compliant if you are to host people in public events, in your backyard, or in other venues as well. I received about 12 phone calls from residents that are looking for vaccines. Another resident who was complaining, again, of protestations by the abortion clinic and other public works matters. The planning board last evening convened, again, new members sworn, and testimony taken in 2 applications. One was at a gas station, which was approved, and the Community Synagogue Kesher application is still underway. There'll be a 3rd day of hearings set for January 28th. That ends my notes. Obviously, there are other personnel and delicate matters that we're not permitted to talk about. All of this content that I spoke about is all in the public purview, and I'm happy to entertain questions, comments, and so forth on anything that's important at this time. I would like to dedicate, if I can, to the person of the week, Ms. Stacey Abrams, for her extraordinary leadership, walking and stewardship in bringing us home 2 United States senators and turning the tide of our federal government. So, Stacey, keep up the work. That's I usually tip my hat end to somebody with coffee with the mayor or water with the mayor, and Stacey earned that trust this week. Questions?
Miss Amy Bullock has, did you have your hand up?
Hi, Amy.
Yes. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I want to share some information in regards to COVID testing and the vaccine for people who do not have insurance. The CARES Act has set aside $1 billion for uninsured people to get testing and the vaccine. Providers have to enroll in the program. It's a provider relief fund. Providers have to enroll in that program, and they have to submit the claims for the uninsured people through that program, and they will be reimbursed at Medicare rates. The key is that the provider has to enroll. Not all providers have enrolled in this program. So back in June, when we did the antibody testing, none of the people who came to get tested were billed because Quest Diagnostics participates in the Provider Relief Fund for uninsured patients. So the hospitals should be aware of this, and they should be able to say with confidence that if someone does not have insurance, we will not bill them because we will file the claim under the Provider Relief Fund. If the provider does not participate in the program or fails to file the claim, then the person can be billed. The person has no control over this. It is all dependent upon the provider enrolling and submitting the claim. So my ask is that, and I don't know if it would be you, the assemblymen, the senators, hospitals, large clinics should be required to participate in this program.
So this is new information. I see that
So it's actually not quite, so it's not really new.
well, the CARES Act funding.
The program actually went into effect on April 22nd.
No, but it's new information that they're going to extend the CARES Act funding into 2021. It ran out on December 30th. So what's new is that they're going to permit the CARES Act funding to go there to people who can't afford the vaccine, as I understand that. That's new. That's wonderful. But more importantly,
according to their sites, it's still happening.
Good, and that's wonderful. And that needs to be deployed to individuals, and any plans for anybody to disseminate vaccines have to be transparent to individuals what the cost is, if they have insurance or if they don't have insurance. And in my conversation yesterday with Mr. Geller, I understood that that measures would be taken to take funds from insurance, and if people don't have it, then there would be some charitable provision. Again,
so that's exactly how it works. If you have insurance, it has to be filed through your insurance company. They cover it. There's no copay or deductible applied. Now, if you go to the doctor's office for a COVID test and you start to talk about your knee hurting, that changes the dynamic of your visit.
right. And,
but if you're solely there for a COVID-related purpose, then there should not be a copay or a deductible. And the providers can file the claims under the Provider Relief Fund, but they have to enroll. And this is why you had smaller labs coming in, doing testing, people getting billed that didn't have insurance, hundreds of dollars, because the reimbursement through the program is at Medicare rates, which is not really, it's not a great reimbursement. It's more profitable to get the self-pay. But this information needs to be made available, and all the hospitals and large clinics should be required to participate in this for people who don't have insurance. There's no reason that anybody should get a bill.
I don't
30 years in the lab business,
yeah, I don't.
So I know what I'm talking about.
I don't see anybody pushing for billing on this. I see the Bergen County executive in his briefing, and I did this in my last week's coffee with the mayor, spoke heavily about the human resource need in deploying ongoing testing and the deployment of the vaccine. That is going to cost the county a lot of money to have personnel, but the actual vaccine, I think, is presumed to be gobbled up by insurance or some kind of charitable means. But you're right, the vendor who's disseminating it has to make it clear, Amy, to the public what the financial expectation is going to be and to make efforts to absorb it. Again, the plan here is for us to meet this challenge. I'm writing my own pandemic handbook. I have about 300 and something pages worth of notes already, because the next mayor and the next generation who has to deal with this thing should have a deployment of PPE and all kinds of other advice and we're learning as we go. And I'm very proud. I just want to end, if I can, before I take more questions, by saying how proud I am of our new city manager, the governing body, the council, and all of the directors and chiefs of the different departments for stepping up in these extraordinary times. I tried as best as I could to reappoint as many people, including Joe Sorbonelli as OEM director, because of their institutional knowledge and their love of the city of Englewood. It's unparalleled, and yes, I believe, Amy, it's going to have something to do with the legislative representatives that we have in Trenton, to make sure that that information is required of vendors to put forward, and if funding is necessary, that Trenton provides a resource so that nobody hesitates to get the vaccine. I think all of the politics of the vaccine seems to have been, all that noise has evaporated. People are anxious to get it. I have friends that have already gotten the second vaccine, and there's something psychologically invigorating knowing that there are people out there that can help others that won't get it themselves. And kudos to the federal government for stepping up through this warp speed deployment. I can't imagine a 95 or 94% effective vaccine taking this short a period of time. Just the knowledge that I have of science and the experience that we have in history has never seen something so majestic. Now, just imagine the numbers that we have. The city of Englewood has 28,000 residents. We have 26,000 first responders in Bergen County alone. Just imagine what it takes to get all of those vaccinated twice. So it's important, the logistics here. Bad snow delays things. Bad weather delays things. Power outages through storms and all the other competing interests that we have. We just need to be ready to pivot to make sure that people's quality of life is improved in these difficult times. Questions?
I see Diane.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Esperanza. Mayor, you mentioned Martin Luther King Day, and on Monday, January 18th, posted on Englewood News from Pastor Preston Thompson, is that they will be holding their 51st annual celebration, and the entire community is invited virtually. However, they also list in their literature that there will be a march starting at 9:30 a.m. From City Hall. And
So-
that, I believe, is the annual march. Is that still on?
Yeah, so what day is this now?
I have it on Monday, January 18th, celebrating Martin Luther King Day, at 9:30 from City Hall.
Right, and when is there a Zoom session?
Yes, it says worship service at 11 o'clock on Facebook, at the Ebenezer Baptist Church and the YouTube Ebenezer Baptist Church Network.
Okay, got it.
I can send you the literature.
Yeah, please, if you can, and we'll post it up then. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? Any questions?
I don't see any hands raised or questions, but I wanted to bring up one more very important program for the library that's next Thursday, the 14th at 7 p.m. It's a book discussion, and the program and the title of the book is From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And the authors will be speaking, A. Kirsten Mullen and William A. Darity Jr. It's a program that we're co-hosting with Hackensack Library, TNEC, Bergenfield, Fort Lee. So if you are interested, please feel free to check on our website and social media, Facebook event, to register for this event next Thursday night at 7.
Thank you. Also that day, competing with that, is the 13th film screening and discussion also by the Age Friendly group. So make sure all this content is out there, Esperanza, for people to make choices and so forth. Cool. Any other questions from the usual suspects?
I don't see any other questions or hands raised.
No, we like that. Anything on Facebook, Esperanza?
There were some comments, but I don't see any questions in particular.
Okay, good. So my next communication is going to be to move the Englewood Hospital That's Englewood Health and the Palisades Court effort over to the city manager's office so that they can start working on that. And any other vendors that are trying to come in to do vaccinations and testing to make sure that we have robust options for our residents. I want to thank Ann for joining us. It's kind of you. Come back to the same Bat channel, Bat station, anytime you're welcome to. And to everybody who watches this in the course of the weekend and follows up, my cell phone is 347-203-6355. Again, that's my personal cell phone, not my City Hall one, 347-203-6355. I return all my calls. And again, I thank you for the trust that you placed in me. This is not something that I take for granted, and I will continue to work hard. Please, please, if you don't mind, keep me up on any blind spots or any topics that have not come up, and so forth. Be very sensitive in these days that you don't let your guard down. We're so close. This is, again, the beginning of the end, and it's a bumpy ride. Just be safe, be healthy. And again, we have a lot of wonderful things ahead of us in 2021. I saw a very cute a post on Facebook the other day, and it read like this: I'd like to cancel my subscription to 2021. I've experienced the first 7-day trial free, and I'm not interested. So all I can say is we're lucky. We'll tell our grandchildren, and they'll tell their children, hopefully, about these times in reflection in a rearview mirror, and that we got through this. Let's keep an eye on the important things. Look after your neighbor, whether it's shoveling snow or taking their garbage. Just look at your left, look at your right, and this is how we're going to get through it. Okay, Godspeed, everybody. Have a good weekend. Shabbat Shalom, Shanli.
Shabbat Shalom, Mayor Wiles. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure, Shanli. And to everybody watching this, I wish you Godspeed, good health. Okay, we'll see you next week, same time.
Have a good weekend.
God bless everybody.
Take care.
That's all, folks.